The Crooked Epic, 1 in 1, The Inn of Maniacal Madness, 8, Alex, The Boat, 8A, 2. Meanwhile, Alex was not in the cave nor in the town of Hob, nor anywhere near the only escape route from this universe. He had found himself trapped. He was in a crate within a boxcar of a train headed miles and miles away from ever seeing his family again. The man inside the crate was restrained and was a cloned replica of their father, a trained actor, soldier, impersonator, and murderer. Alex did not know the details of this theory and sat in the dark within mere inches of him. He was, however, becoming skeptical and pessimistic about his entire plan to board the train. He had gone into the crate with the wand, which was rendered useless after only about 5 minutes, and he was now trapped inside. The man who looked like Christopher Good had not shown any consciousness signs even when Alex had tried to awaken him. After a few miles of railroad had passed underneath them, Alex had tried shaking his father to life, and when this had not worked, he made interim attempts to shout to startle him awake, all to no avail. Alex observed the tied straitjacket, tightened muzzle, and the faint breaths the man let out of his mouth, which caused his chest to rise and slowly deflate. It had been almost 25 minutes of sitting in the dark crate within the locked boxcar. He tried to remember the legend on the map he had scanned before his impromptu discovery of Christopher. The space between the town of Hob and the southern area of Gob seemed to be 3 or so inches, which led him to assume the distance must be between 30 and 60 miles. He had no idea whether it was longer or shorter, yet as minutes became hours, he became unsure of even his reasonable mathematical estimation. The train was traveling over 35 miles per hour, and it would have been until around 12 p.m. for it to have gone around the looping rail system after it crossed the major rivers beyond Gob. He had gotten on the train before 9 a.m. in Hob. Alex still had no idea what Gob would look like, only the electronic machinery and industry concept he had gathered from his reconnaissance and the visual representation of waterways, deltas, mountains, and lakes as depicted on the map. After over a full half hour, Alex started to get desperate about his situation with Christopher's impostor. Eventually, the memory of his experience with Ahmed's double, and even the consideration toward his sighting of the child who had looked precisely like Ted, whose bleeding gunshot wound was almost completely ignored during a high-speed chase by FBI, all began to chisel away at Alex's fortified self-righteous attitude. He looked up at Christopher's shadowy form as it leaned back against the crate's side. Alex decided to try to unwrap the muzzle off the face, although the straitjacket was tied with chains and locked. He had not brought his nearly emptied backpack with him on the train, had left it in room 315 of the inn, and had only the wand, letters, canteen, and map of Hob in his possession. Alex reached up to the muzzle and felt around the back of Christopher's head, around the back of his neck, under where the brain cerebellum was attached to the stem and spinal cord. A strange pouch was attached to 2 tubular cylinders inserted into his skin. They seemed to be loose enough to withdraw, but Alex worried about the delicate surgical incision's extraction outcome. This disconcerted the brother. He sat back against the side of the crate and began to imagine what had happened to their father, whether he had come to Hob and been captured or somehow involved with the mad scientist's experiment with duplication of human bodies. As he kept thinking about it, the concept of their father being caught in Hob without being able to send for backup seemed unacceptable to Alex. It caused him to grow more paranoid of the natural origin of the man he was seated next to, cramped inside the crate. Alex looked at the wand, wishing he had not gotten onto the train. He realized to escape through the cavern with its magic was impossible. Alex tried to nap, but before noon he was awakened by the sound of tapping on the side of the crate. He flipped over to face the dark wooden wall he was trapped within and heard someone stomping on the boxcar floor. The train was still moving fast down the tracks and had not come to a stop so far. Alex nervously stood up and carefully leaned over toward Christopher's motionless body. He felt around Christopher's stiff neck for the attached pouch. He turned the knob on the side, and Christopher's body was immediately thrown violently backward in a spasming rage against the wall of the crate, his chemical pouch now converted to alcohol. This conversion quickly killed the clone, but not before a brief, hectic struggle. The crate collapsed under the weight of his body in spasmodic reaction to replace nutrients and concoctions in the pouch on his neck. He was still fully restrained in a locked straitjacket and muzzle as his reanimated body fell limply onto the boxcar floor. Now it was time for Alex to consider how the wand only seemed to work in proximity to the Pandora portals. He knew there would be more portals in Gob, but until the train stopped at its destination, the spell of invisibility would be rendered useless. If he was seen by any of the soldiers, he would be captured again. He had to escape on foot. Gob had to be closer than 20 miles, but he could not risk it. Alex looked at the hill beneath the train tracks, mentally measured the distance and the velocity, and pumped his legs with his knees 2 times, swinging in and out with his arms on the sides of the open doorway before leaping out of the boxcar. He rolled down the hill and stood up in the expansive forest between Hob and Gob. Alex crossed the tracks after he walked up the short incline and stared out at the plateau between the rails and a stretch of woods which preceded a snow-capped mountain range, not unlike the Cordilleras of Midwest America. The potentially obstructed path toward the western highway left Alex stunned. He looked up at the afternoon sun and knew he had gotten enough rest to make this journey, which he would need to survive without food. He walked down the sharp decline on the other side and continued into the prairie side of the tracks toward the wilderness. There were only high grasses and bushes, and it was over half a mile of walking until he realized the forest ahead was leading to miles up the mountains. The hills would overtake his hike, turning into dangerous climbing upward, adding at least another mile. He started to worry about the strenuosity of the hike and whether he could even make it across the mountains before nightfall. However, he was at the edge of the trees, and he continued unremittingly through the trains. The forest was dark, and the path to Gob seemed unforgivably formidable.